One of the best parts about Pokemon games involves choosing which Pokemon to use. Whether selecting a starter or catching something you've come across in the wild, anyone that's played these games can agree that assembling your own custom team to beat the game is a defining part of Pokemon. Of course, when it comes to speedruns, this choice mostly comes down to selecting one Pokemon that you're going to battle with, and some others to use HMs or field moves. After all, focusing on battling with one specific Pokemon means that it doesn't have to split experience with its teammates. In most generations, the Pokemon you use in speedruns tends to be one of the starters selected at the start of the game. In some games, runners will use a starter for a lengthy portion of the game, then catch a legendary Pokemon and use it for the rest of the game. However, the Generation 1 games stand apart from many of the later gens in this regard. While Squirtle is used until Brock is defeated, the rest of the game is beaten by something else, and it's not a legendary either. In Pokemon Red and Yellow, runners will catch a male Nidoran early on, which they'll evolve into Nidoking. At first glance, it's not exactly apparent why Nidoking would be a good choice for beating the game quickly. Competitively, it was overshadowed by a lot of other Gen 1 threats. Its stats are above average and fairly balanced, but none of them really stand out individually. Its typing gives it some offensive benefits, but it also has quite a few common weaknesses, such as water, ice, psychic, and ground. And yet, while this fearsome creature only stands at a height of 4'7", yes, I'm not kidding, this thing is shorter than Danny DeVito, he is indisputably the fastest way to beat these games. Today, I'm going to explain exactly why Nidoking is so good at beating Red and Yellow quickly, without any major glitches. The first major benefit to the Nidoking line is its early availability. Male Nidorans are available almost immediately after the start of the game, just after getting the Pokedex and entering Viridian City for the second time. Arguably the biggest reason why it's good to get Nidoran so early involves how RNG manipulation works in Gen 1. I'm not going to go into too much detail on how RNG manips work, but allow me to sum up the basics. Basically, when the game is saved and reset, RNG will generally start at the same point every time. This means that if you save at a specific spot, then execute very specific inputs, you can encounter a Nidoran with extremely good stats. For more technical details, I've included a link in the description that should clarify some things. So why does this occurring early in the run matter? Keep in mind that RNG manipulation is a time commitment. It takes time to save the game, do specific movement, get an encounter, and catch it. This means that if you get your main Pokemon later in the run, you have to weigh two options. Either use a non-RNG manipped Pokemon until that point, or do an RNG manip to get a temporary main and then do another RNG manip later to get your real main. Good examples of both of these strategies can be seen in the current runs of Pokemon Red that use Clefable and Dugtrio. The Clefable route uses a non-manipped Squirtle all the way until Mount Moon, where Clefairy is manipped and caught. Meanwhile, the Dugtrio route manips a Nidoran male and uses it until reaching Vermilion City, where runners then manip for a Dugtrio. Needless to say, both of these alternatives are pretty inefficient. In general, it's more efficient to rely on one RNG manipped Pokemon for as much of the run as possible, and the Nidoking line does just that. While Male Nidoran does rely on a non-manipped Squirtle to defeat Brock, the Nidoran line can safely and quickly complete the rest of the run. Another reason for the Nidoking line being the best choice for speedrunners comes down to how quickly Nidoran reaches its final evolution. Nidoran's requirements for evolution are pretty simple: no trading, no friendship levels, and no holding your DS upside down. It evolves into Nidorino at level 16, which then evolves into Nidoking when you give it a Moonstone. Well, conveniently for Nidoran, it reaches level 16 in Mount Moon in Red, and on Route 3 in Yellow. Since you can get a Moonstone in Mount Moon, this means you end up evolving to Nidoking before even leaving Mount Moon. Since Nidoking has relatively high stats compared to what you'll be fighting in the early game, Nidoking can defeat its opponents with relative ease.
Oh my god.
As long as you can actually hit your opponents, of course. In comparison, Squirtle doesn't reach its final evolution until level 36, leaving it more vulnerable to certain fights early on. Nidoking's typing also gives it an important advantage. Remember what I said before about its ground poison typing giving it a lot of weaknesses? Well, what if I told you that this wasn't necessarily a bad thing? In Pokemon Red and Yellow, there exists a mechanic called Red Bar. Red Bar occurs when your Pokemon has less than about 20.8% of its max HP. Below this HP, this annoying beeping sound effect can be heard. While this sound effect is annoying, it actually has benefits. When this noise plays, certain noises are skipped by the game, including level up jingles and fainting sound effects. The exact benefits of Red Bar vary between Red and Yellow, but in summary, runners almost always want to have their Pokemon in Red Bar for these benefits. So what does Nidoking's typing have to do with this? Well, it ties into Gen 1's trainer AI. In Gen 1, there's certain AI that will prioritize moves that are super effective, and deprioritize moves that are ineffective. This has some very important consequences. On one hand, it means that certain trainers can use specific damaging moves against Nidoking, which can help it reach Red Bar. For example, in Red, players will heal to a certain HP before Lance so that his Gyarados will Hydro Pump Nidoking into Red Bar. On the other hand, players can also take advantage of Pokemon that have mostly ineffective moves against Nidoking. This culminates in a strategy, for Pokemon Red specifically, known as Boom Strats. Take a look at the moveset of Gym Leader Koga's final Pokemon, Weezing. As you can see, it knows 3 poison moves and 1 normal move. Since the poison moves will be deprioritized thanks to Koga's smart AI, Weezing will only use the normal move, Self-Destruct, against Nidoking. This allows runners to intentionally feint to Weezing, win the fight because they have other Pokemon remaining, then use rare candies to revive their Nidoking into Red Bar for a large portion of the run. In addition, Smart AI and Nidoking's typing have another useful interaction. Remember how I said that Smart AI will prioritize moves that are super effective? Well, it's a bit more complicated than that. In reality, a move can still be considered super effective even if it's a non-damaging move. This means that if Nidoking faces an opponent with Smart AI and has moves like this, then the opponent will only use Agility, since the AI just sees this as a Psychic type move and spams it because Psychic is super effective against Poison. This gives Nidoking a lot of setup opportunities in the late game. With all of this being said, there's one more crucial reason why Nidoking is so prevalent in Gen 1 speedruns. Its move pool. Nidoking's move pool is nothing short of impressive, giving it great coverage and power throughout the entire game. It starts off with Leer and Horn Attack. Leer can lower the opponent's defense, while Horn Attack has impressive power for how early in the game it's obtained. These two moves allow it to quickly get past a lot of the early game fights. In Yellow, Nidoran is one of the few things that can quickly beat Brock, all thanks to Double Kick. Once it reaches Mount Moon, Nidoking seems to always have access to a move that can deal with anything it comes across. For bulky rock and ground types, it learns Water Gun and Bubble Beam. Bulky water types, Thunderbolt. Ghost types with high special and immunity to normal type moves, Rock Slide. Well, if it hits. Dragon types and other late game threats, Ice Beam and Blizzard. Speaking of Blizzard, this move was way better in Gen 1 than in later generations, mainly because it had 90 accuracy instead of 70 accuracy. You might be surprised that Ice Beam gets used at all, but, well, that 10% chance to miss can be pretty devastating. Thrash also deserves a mention. Unlike in later gens, where Thrash had 120 power and lasted for 2 to 3 turns before confusing you, Gen 1's Thrash had 90 power and lasted for 3 to 4 turns. This makes it an excellent option for quickly clearing mid-game fights, especially since using the move only costs 1 PP and usually results in at least 2 or 3 kills. And of course, it's impossible to list Nidoking's moves without mentioning Earthquake, a very strong ground type move that's even stronger thanks to Nidoking's ground typing. And last but certainly not least, it gets one of the most coveted moves in the game. A move so good that its ability to be obtained and learned in the middle of the game elevates Nidoking above all others. You know it, you love it, it's Mega Punch. Just kidding, that move sucks. I'm talking about Horn Drill. This one-hit kill move might seem gimmicky with its 30% base accuracy, but thanks to the item X Accuracy boosting all of your moves to 100% accuracy in Gen 1, this move gives Nidoking the ability to OHKO nearly everything in the game, provided that the opponent isn't faster or Ghost type. Simply put, Horn Drill allows Nidoking to annihilate teams that would otherwise be extremely dangerous or slow to defeat. This move undoubtedly defines Nidoking, and solidifies him as the uncontested king of Gen 1. Well, that about sums up why Nidoking can beat Gen 1 faster than anything else, without major glitches that is. I mean, if you want to allow glitches, you don't even need any Pokemon to beat this. Just save the game in your room, do some wanking about in your inventory, and bam, you win. Congrats, Game Freak programming once again. But really, I hope you learned a bit from my video. Thanks for watching, make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a comment if you have any questions.